This morning we're given yet another parable. This one ends with a great admonition about weeping and gnashing of teeth and furnace and fire, all such scary things. That could be an entire sermon. It's not going to be this sermon. I can tell you that a significant number of biblical scholars question why the author of Matthew is constantly explaining the parables. It doesn't happen as much in the other Gospels. And there is some thought that perhaps Matthew is over-explaining the parables. Watch out for simple solutions in our world. And as I said, that's another sermon. What I'd like to do is to go to what we are sure Jesus said 2,000 years ago, which is the fact that our world and the children of God in our world are side by side with competing evil forces. There are a lot of things that are set up against us as we try to be disciples, and they're alongside us. We don't have to go far this past week to see that airplanes are shot out of the sky. Israel is invading Palestine. There's all kinds of violence, you know it as well as I do, that the tares, the weeds are amidst the good crop. So what can we do as children of God? What is our task if we want to follow Jesus as a disciple? It can be overwhelming what a single person can do facing such odds. Would offer this morning, the most important thing you and I can do is to be attentive to our own spiritual journey. To be in touch as often as we can with where we are as Christians, what we truly believe, how we live our faith in this incredibly big and confusing world. We need to be attentive to what is often called doing inner work. That means looking inside ourselves and tending the seed that God has planted in our souls. For as much as we do that, then we can grow strong, confident, and helpful in our world. Okay, big task, right? How do we go about doing it? Well, each of us are very, very different, and our own inner work is going to involve different things. One of the ways I do inner work is to go on road trips to historical places. Many of you know that. And last month I was down in Texas to visit a couple of the presidential libraries. And in Texas they have billboards. And they have billboards next to billboards, next to billboards, next to billboards. And I wrote down a couple of billboards that were juxtaposed close to each other that I thought were interesting for us today. First billboard, gun megastore. Over 15,000 guns in stock. Cremation specials starting at $825. Next set of billboards. It's 10 commandments, not 10 multiple choices. Discount laser tattoo removal. And my favorite would be choose to go to this establishment. Deer preparation, taxidermy, world famous smoked sausages. Being out on the road gives me not only a sense of journey, of voyage, of adventure, of destination, But it also helps me get in touch with the first step of doing inner work. The first step of spiritual direction is to acknowledge the fact that this direction always begins within oneself. It's going to involve others and community as we go along, but it has to start here. It has to start alone. It has to start in solitude, with one reaching in and looking for that God place. Now, what's it like in solitude? How can we get a glimpse of this first step? Well, when it comes to finding first steps, there's no better place to go in this world than A.A. Milne and seeking wisdom from Winnie the Pooh. It's true. Chapter 9, in which Piglet is entirely surrounded by water. It rained, and it rained, and it rained. Piglet told himself that never in all his life, and he was a goodness knows how old, 3, was it, or 4? Never had he seen so much rain. Days and days of rain. It's a little anxious, he said to himself, to be a very small animal entirely surrounded by water. Christopher Robin and Pooh could escape by climbing trees, and Kanga could escape by jumping, and Rabbit could escape by burrowing, and Owl could escape by flying, and Eeyore could escape by making a loud noise until rescued. And here I am, entirely surrounded by water, and I can't do anything. It's hard to be a very small animal entirely surrounded by water, said Piglet. The inner journey begins by an acknowledgement that no one else can be on that journey when we start it. The next step of this journey is to watch for the clues. Watch for the signs that God gives us in our lives. The things God has told us are tried and true that we need to be about on this journey. Things such as prayer, worship, study, companionship, dedication, giving of oneself. Watch and be attentive to those good signs. C.S. Lewis's book, The Silver Chair, is the next movie being made as we sit here in the series of the Chronicles of Narnia. And it's, of all of the Narnia books, it's often thought to be the one that gives us spiritual direction in our lives. Many scholars say that Narnia, that magical land where animals speak and where the Christ figure is a lion called Aslan, many people say that that land of Narnia is the landscape of the soul. And so we can learn on our spiritual journey a great deal about ourselves from that landscape. In the Silver Chair, a young girl named Jill is being sent into Narnia. But before she goes down into that land, she is with Aslan, the great lion, on the top of a high mountain, which is it's like heaven in many ways. And she's about to be sent down, and she's told to remember the signs, the clues of what she has to be about on her mission in Narnia. As I read this, imagine for a minute the signs are like our clues, are like seeking God through our prayers. Aslan said, "In a moment you will go, but first remember, remember, remember the signs. Say them to yourself when you wake in the morning and when you lie down at night and when you wake in the middle of the night. And whatever strange things may happen to you, let nothing turn your mind from following the signs. And secondly, I give you a warning. Here on the mountain I've spoken to you clearly. I will not often do so down in Narnia. Here on the mountain, the air is clear and your mind is clear. As you drop into Narnia, the air will thicken. Take great care that it does not confuse your mind. And the signs which you've learned here will not look at all as you expect them to look when you meet them there. That is why it is so important to know them by heart and to pay no attention to appearances. Remember the signs, believe in the signs. Nothing else matters. And now, dear one, farewell. Searching for God within ourselves sometimes doesn't look like we think it's going to look like. Sometimes the air is thick and we have trouble with that quest. But we always must remember what God has shown us is true and not to be anxious about it. Anxiety is so common in our world. Henry Nouwen says here that the greatest obstacle to spiritual direction is anxiety. Asking those words, how advanced am I? Have I matured since I started being on the spiritual path? At what level am I on? How do I get to the next level? Where's God? What does God look like? Am I nearer to God today than I was to God yesterday? Letting that go, looking for the signs, looking for what God is doing in our lives right now. Finally, my friends, I'd like to share, in closing, a third step. It comes from a book I just finished. It's a very small little book by a Quaker by the name of Parker Palmer, and I really want to commend it to all of us. It's called Let Your Life Speak. And Palmer offers the idea that when we look for direction, when we look for God, we often look for those open doors, those opportunities to further our spiritual journey in our lives as disciples. But what happens when a door closes? Well, we can handle a closed door here. We can handle a closed door there. But sometimes when we look at the door and the door is shut, we need to turn around and face the other direction. And if we're moving in the right way, we hear the sounds of the doors closing, but the closing doors are behind us. And that momentum can move us forward into where God would have us more nearly be. Remarkable thought, the power and momentum of closing doors when they're behind us and not ahead. My friends, these are just a few simple ideas on doing inner work, on getting in touch a little more with our spiritual selves. But I would say there's no more important work than we can do in our lives than this. For this is what tends and nurtures and takes care of those precious seeds that are inside of us that need to grow and to grow and to be part of our world, that empower us as the heart and hands and voice of God, that lets us transform this place we're in more nearly into the kingdom that God intends it to be. Amen.
My love is making music with my